Okay, we're going to transition now into some discussion about cost. So hopefully you have already reviewed chapter 2 on cost concepts and cost terminology. And this is a very important chapter because we'll be utilizing a lot of these terms throughout the term. One couple of things I want to just make sure that you're clear on. When we talk about companies, we usually talk about them in terms of whether they're a merchandising company or a manufacturing company. So a merchandising company, just in case we're not sure, is a company like Nordstrom's or Macy's or Foot Locker. Because what they do is they buy and sell other people's products. Nordstrom's buys Jimmy Choo shoes for women and Tommy Bahama stuff for guys. And Foot Locker buys Nike and all these other kinds of shoes and sells them. So their cost of inventory is the things that they buy and sell. However, that Jimmy Choo makes shoes, and Nike makes shoes, and Apple makes iPhones. They are manufacturers. So most of this book has a tendency to focus primarily on cost and the like as it relates to a manufacturing company. So to that end, let's get down to understanding what goes into the cost of a product, like an iPhone, like an automobile, or like a Tommy Bahama shirt. There are 3 components of a product cost that are in every product, regardless of whether or not they're a Jimmy Choo shoe or a Tommy Bahama shirt. Direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Those are the 3, and as you can illustrate here with this simple drawing of this Lamborghini or a Ferrari or whatever, there is some direct material in that product, there is some direct labor in that product, and there is some manufacturing overhead. Oftentimes, these direct material and direct labor costs are considered prime costs or direct costs because they are easily traceable. We'll get into that a little bit later in another chapter. But direct material is any material that is part of the fundamental product. So if it's a Jimmy Choo shoe, it's going to be some leather and it's going to be some other materials. In a shirt, it's going to be buttons and silk and thread. And in this iPad, it's going to be memory chips and resistors and buttons and plastic and you name it, things that are in the product. Well, in this automobile, we know that there's a radio, we know there's tires, we know there's spark plugs and fuel injectors, and I'm not a mechanic, so I can't tell you any more than that. But all of those things are raw material items that are an integral part of the product. Okay, that is direct material. The second component of a product cost is direct labor. These are the people who actually are putting the product together. The touch labor, the person with the soldering iron, the person with the wrench, whoever they are, they're the people that are putting the product together and maybe filling out a time card that says that they worked on project A or B. This is not the guy who's walking around and making sure that people are walking. This is not the person who's buying the raw material. They're not direct labor. Only the people that are actually physically converting that raw material into a product, converting the silk and the buttons and the thread into a shirt, converting the various components that go into this iPhone into an iPhone. So direct material is one component, direct labor is the second component. The last component, and frankly the one that sometimes gives students like you a bit more of a problem, is the concept of overhead, specifically manufacturing overhead. Now let's just assume for a moment that the room you're sitting in is the room where we make things. We convert raw material into a product. Let's say we make iPhones. Well, you need the lights on. You need to pay your electricity bill. You maybe have some equipment that's being depreciated. You might have a supervisor walking around monitoring how progress is being done in the manufacturing of the product. These are people that are, and costs that are absolutely necessary to support the process of converting that raw material, buying that raw material, as well as putting the product together. So in short, any cost incurred in manufacturing to produce a product that is not direct material and not direct labor is in fact overhead. So looking at this sheet, we see, for example, indirect labor, quite different than direct labor. Direct labor is the guys that put it together. Indirect labor are the people that support that activity. Could be an engineer, could be a supervisor. Conversely, some materials are used probably to lubricate equipment or maybe help cut the sheet metal that goes into this iPhone. You didn't get a saw blade with your iPhone when you bought it at the local store. It's a piece of indirect material that is a necessary element to facilitate the ability to make this product. So in short, there are three components of every product: raw material, direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead.